By now you may have heard about the science of reading, but what's it all about? This video will give you a bit of an overview to help get you started, or to help you reflect on what you currently know. This is how the Cambridge Dictionary defines science. So based on this, you could say that the science of reading is what we currently know about the structure and behaviour of reading, based on what's been observed, measured and reported in evidence-based research. As with all research, this knowledge and these theories continue to be tested and to develop over time. For over 200 years, there's been interest in how we learn to read the English language, but for this exercise, we'll only go back about 40 years. Now, while there's been lots of talk about how difficult it can be to learn how to decode words, in 1985 we began to realise that comprehending what others think or believe can be challenging too. By 1985, we had evidence to show that reading comprehension was definitely the product of the ability to decode words by comparing non-dyslexic readers with readers with dyslexia. But shortly after, Goff and Tunma had us realising that it's a little more complex than that. Yes, of course you need to be able to decode words to be able to understand what you read. That's absolutely necessary. But what about children with hyperlexia? They can decode words from a very young age, but have trouble understanding what they've read. Isn't language comprehension necessary too? In fact, both are necessary, but neither sufficient on their own. And so, the simple view of reading model was born. However, at this stage, it was just a theory. And so, in 1990, Hoover and Goff validated the model through a longitudinal study that had followed children from 1st grade to 4th grade. But this story doesn't end there. By 1998, we learned that children don't have to wait until they can decode simple texts before they can start inferring meaning from texts. Theory of mind concepts, the ability to infer what other people are thinking based on what they say and do, those concepts are present in the picture storybooks that are read to children from a very young age. And by the by, both language comprehension and word recognition are very complex skills. Scarborough showed that with her reading rope, and the many threads that make up both, used to show that when any of those threads are weak, a child's ability to read will be compromised, especially when the two come together for words that will hold different meanings depending on the context in which they're used. And even for more proficient readers, this type of learning is at times best achieved with explicit teaching, especially for less frequent words such as technical or literary words that they don't come across on a daily basis. And what's more, the way we read changes as we become more proficient at reading too, relying more on phonology when first learning to read, and gradually relying more on orthographic mapping as our skill level improves. Something that the authors of The Simple View of Reading were in total agreement with, to the point that they changed the decoding component to word recognition instead, and added some of the variables to each of the components. All this research was happening at the same time that research into memory and recall was also taking place, including how attention control can help us to filter out unnecessary information and move new information into long-term memory, hence the role of explicit teaching. And so we've started to see new models come about that seek to bring all this research together. But Hoover and Tunma had something to say about that. They said, don't go confusing the forest for the trees. The simple view of reading, that's the forest. It shows us what key components are needed for reading success. All those other elements, executive functioning, theory of mind, Scarborough's threads, they're the trees, they said. They show us the variables that make each key component strong. And the research continues. For those of you new to this research, I hope you now feel caught up on many of the main findings to date. But keep your eyes and ears open, because one thing is certain, we'll learn more about the science of reading as more research comes to light.